Awesome. So, welcome to Manifesting Your Love Life as a God loving single parent. My name is Virginia Jimenez, and my co host, Cassandra Cadeau, is here as well.
Yes.
Happy to be here with all of you. I want to go ahead and introduce ourselves further. I let Cassandra go ahead. Cassandra, you can share a bit more about yourself. Cassandra, I know is a co-parent, but aside from that, she's also the founder of Blended Hearts. So take it away, Cassandra.
Yes. Thank you, Virginia. First of all, thank you for having me here and having me share this time with you and your Love Camp audience. I'm really excited to share some awesome information with you guys today. So, as you stated, my name is Cassandra Cadeau. I am the founder and program organizer of Blended Hearts. And Blended Hearts is a nonprofit based out of Orlando, Florida. And we focus on all things blended family. And so, every spectrum, every dynamic that you can think of that goes on in a blended family, we help parents work through that. And so our signature program is focused more on co-parenting. And so if you're looking to improve your co-parenting experience and improve communication, improve the relationship that is ideal and can create a safe and healthy environment for the children that you share, it's great to make that effort to do so. And so I connected with Virginia because of her passion with Love Camp on this project. And it's definitely not by accident because we're in a season now, as you all can agree, that, love is in the air. And then in the blended mix, as a single parent trying to move forward from past experiences, we can find that it can be challenging to make that step. And so I'm happy to be here to take part in the conversation.
Thank you, Cassandra, for that introduction. And I'm happy to have you here because at the core of it, the context of what we're discussing today, it's not just love, it's love. It's finding love again as a single co-parent. My name is
Yes.
Virginia Jimenez, founder of Love Camp, a coach, love coach. Been known as a transformational coach for the last 6 years. My focus has been to support singles that have gone through betrayal. But I discovered in the last couple years, actually, and most recently, I had a former client that her and I were discussing just what her experience was like with me, and we realized that she was actually going through a divorce at the moment, and I supported her with her co-parenting process, like the
Hmm.
what took place and how to navigate that because there was so much emotions and fears that were happening, and I realized that I'm also somebody that can focus on those that are undergoing some sort of change like that, or they're already in that space and they're just trying to navigate the communication, the conversations that take place so that they can have ease in their life, in all areas of their life, and they can create their love life. Like that's truly
Yes.
been my focus. Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah. So that's truly been my focus for all these years, and it continues to be refined. And I've been allowing God to just go through the process with me and just like, I'm listening all the way through. So I'm just gonna, that's a little bit about me. Aside from that, I'm a parent. I have two teenage boys. So I can't believe I have two teenage boys. It's crazy. Um, it's a big deal. Cassandra, you have a big girl too. So
Yeah,
you have your
and
children.
as you were speaking, I realized that there's a great fun fact that people probably think we're just meeting now because of the topics of discussion in recent months and stuff, but we go way back. We met when I was first starting my co-parenting journey, and so my eldest child is 19 today. And so Virginia and I were in each other's lives way back when she was a baby, and so she has witnessed me working through my co-parenting relationship before it even really had a name where it was just a thing to do to work on. It's been a long journey. So 19 years later, I'm here now with a nonprofit focusing on this because I now have three children. 19 years later, two of them are teenagers. The third one is in middle school, preteen, and I co-parent with two different dads, and it's different. It's different, and it can be challenging, but it can also be rewarding if you choose to be the better self that you can be, you know. And so we'll talk more about this as we get further along in the conversation.
Definitely. And our intentions today, let me click through. We're going to discuss, I'm going to quickly discuss our intention and outcome for today. This has been so important to me for people to have loving relationships in their life, romantic relationships in particular, because truly the quality of our relationships do impact the quality of our lives, how we're having them, right? It's not just enough to have relationships, but to have quality ones. And it's important to understand how to continue to have that, especially after you've gone through divorce or some sort of traumatic experience in a past relationship where it holds you back from actually creating or having the freedom to be yourself with other people and be able to connect with them. It's also because our children are watching and they learn the behaviors that support them in their future relationships are learned from us as parents. And I can see it just from my own upbringing how parents got divorced when I was a teen. Probably should have gotten divorced before I was a teenager. And I could see that this was going on. And it absolutely influenced the type of relationships I had as a young woman or young adult. And
Yes.
our children are constantly watching. And this is something that subconsciously stays with them. And you as a parent want the best for your children, I'm sure. And it starts with having the best for yourself too. Right, Cassandra?
Yes, I totally agree. And our children are watching. They're, you know, I've always I've experienced the fact that it's not so much what we tell our children, it's what we show them. It's how we choose to live our lives and give them something to look up to, something to see as evidence in front of them as they're navigating their own journey in their lives. And so I think my biggest fear is that my mistakes will haunt them. Not that we can't make mistakes, but to be acknowledgeable of the steps and be conscious of the steps that we take in our lives as parents, because our primary job is to raise our children and to nurture them and guide them to be a productive person in life, a healthy person. And so what we do is definitely important because the children are definitely watching.
Yep, absolutely. Um, the outcome I have, the outcome for this webinar today is that we'll explore a plan of action and be intentional and responsible. Responsible. We'll get to, start reflecting on some of the things and be in discovery of what might be there that we get to create something else from, so that we can actually have a loving relationship or a romantic relationship in our life as a single co-parent, right? Just for some small amount of time, hopefully, right? Like, and by the way,
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with being single. I'm not saying there is, but
Mhm.
I'm just an advocate for, like, the children get to experience people being in relationships. So I see it that way. So we'll explore that plan of action and be intentional and responsible. And what you can expect is that we'll go through what life as a co-parent in review, what that's like. What does that even mean? Cassandra will touch on that. um, Anchored in your commitments. We'll review that a little bit, and we'll also establish the vision of your love life, as well as being reflecting on your communication so that you're intentional in creating your love life. And my intention is that we create a safe space here. So if there, are more people at some point, we want to remind them that this is a place where you can speak up and share, and that everything will be confidential while we are recording right now. This section is going to be taken off, so that there's no nothing private or confidential that's stored or put in a public space.
Yes.
Life as a co-parent in review.
Yes. And so this section right here, we're going to explore what it means to, um, I guess, the word co-parenting, co-parent. In my studies on this topic, we live in a society where when we hear the word co-parent, we naturally assume that it's the two individuals that brought life to the child or the children. But in reality, the term co-parent is really just two or more adults that are sharing the responsibility of raising a child. And so when you hear that statement that says it takes a village, it's very true, because there are many co-parenting relationships that don't include the father, the male or the female that it took to produce the child. And so for those of you that are on the call, on this webinar, and that are listening to the replay, I want you to be conscious that what we're going to share, even at least especially some of the things that I share about co-parenting relationships and how they can impact your decision to move forward in love and dating, just realize that if you don't have a relationship with the mother of your child or the father of your child, that's okay, because some of these tips can be applied to the grandparent that you're sharing the parenting relationship with. It can be applied to, the sibling. You might have a brother or sister that's helping you raise this child. And so just be mindful that it's whomever is partnering with you as a parent to help raise your child. And so on the next slide, we're going to explore some questions that I would like for you guys to make a note of. Feel free to write down the questions so that you can reflect on them after the webinar, because some of these questions, they can dive a little bit deep for us. And while we're here on the webinar, it might take away from your ability to work through what these answers might be for you. But for now, let's review the questions real quick. The first one is, what does dating while co-parenting look like to you? And so this question is not so much focused on what it looks like in this present day, because I don't want you to focus on what's not working. I don't want you to focus on your challenges or anything. But in an ideal situation, best case scenario, what would you like co-parenting to look like for you as you're dating? And so and the answers to that, explore what your co-parent's role is in your dating, if any. Explore what your children will be experiencing while you're dating, but primarily explore how you would like to feel. Explore how you would like to carry yourself in the dating process as you're connecting with other individuals, as you're stepping out, as you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and getting ready to open up your life to a new person. The next question is, what are some agreements you may need to establish with your ex? And again, as I stated earlier, if not your ex, because sometimes the ex is not in the picture at all, but with the other person that you're co-parenting with. Because the core nucleus of that parent and the child is set there, it can be very difficult to bring in a new person, and especially in today's day and age, where there might be several people. Sometimes we have to meet a few people before we meet the right one that we want to settle with and explore. And so what type of agreements, maybe another word could be maybe an understanding that you want to have with the other co-parent when it comes to you dating? Some people might think, oh no, that's none of their business what I'm doing. That might be true, but sometimes when it gets to a serious level, as a parent, I know for myself, I would like to know if someone new is around my child, and how often are new people coming around my children. And so sometimes, a majority of the time, it has nothing to do with that parent's opinion or anything. It's just out of the common courtesy of how you would like to how you would like that co-parent to move with you, and you want to give them that courtesy as well. And so there's so many angles to consider when we decide to step outside and date, because we're not dating for ourselves anymore. Even if you were to date and think that you're going out there for something casual, that relationship, however way you want to define it, it's going to pull away from your time as a parent. It's going to be a shared space that you have with everything you do as a parent. And so you want to just take a look at all of that and set the boundaries, set the ideal picture of how you want to move, and make it clear for yourself. That way you can articulate it clearly to that co-parent that's involved as well.
Cassandra, I like that you mentioned the it's not, the co-parent is not always just the former partner or the parent of the child. It could be your, it could be the grandparents, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could see that happening, for example, scenarios where somebody is no longer with that partner and ends up moving back to their parents' home, let's say while they figure things out. And
Yeah.
there is some structures and understandings that get to take place in that kind of scenario. And it is like if it was not the ex, but of course it is a co-parent, exactly as you said.
Yeah.
So I think that that's very valid, what you're saying, like really just understanding what is the ground rules for yourself. What does it look like from those angles? What is it that you might need to share or communicate with that other person? You mentioned as an example, for which I agree with you on this, like, that when my ex was, let's say, dating, he was single still. I definitely was like, I need to know. I need to know who my children are with. So when you
Yeah.
find somebody, my request is that you do let me know, because it's not that I want to know all your details. I just want to know if they're around my kids. Like if you're planning to do
Yeah.
that, I want to get to know them a little bit better. That's
Mm-hmm.
just the way I like to roll, right? So I think that's what you're
Yes.
coming at, is like really just understanding, what do you want that to look like from all angles. So it's not just about the dating, because your dating life is not separate from your other life. It's all one,
Yeah.
it's
It's
all
it's
one
gonna
life.
cross at some point. Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I guess what happens though when people are just like stuck in, like, what, um, they just don't even believe that it's even possible to create that unification in life, right? Like, how do they even date and, you know, co-parent
Mm-hmm.
and all of the other things that are happening, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be like one of the big things with belief.
And
So,
I like this word belief because your state of mind, your way of thinking, the way you choose to perceive your reality going forward, it is so crucial. Because if you do navigate this process believing like, no, this is not possible, we're not going to be able to do it, no matter what you try to do, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to keep hitting that wall with the co-parent. You're going to keep having that clash when it comes to dating. You're going to keep fumbling on what to do, what to say with this new person that you're dating, because subconsciously you truly do believe that no matter what you do, there's no way I can move forward with my life without it being drama filled, without it being chaos and everything. But I tell you, if you believe that there is a possibility that it 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 can definitely happen, because you will start navigating towards those solutions and those avenues to make it a reality for yourself. So belief is a big deal. Like do you believe that you can date while maintaining a healthy co-parenting relationship?
so beliefs are really important. Like you said, Cassandra, it's truly an important thing to keep in mind, because it obviously will impact the access or just being able to create this life. I keep using the word create because it really is what it is. Like at the end of the day, we're choosing. We have some power to choose how we're showing up, and part of that is choosing what we're focusing on, and focus on obviously impacts your beliefs. There was a quote that a former coach of mine told me once. He's like, your story either empowers you or disempowers you, and is the glue that determines if you succeed or not. Divorce your story and marry the truth. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because we're here talking about co-parenting, right? Which typically is because you're no longer with the parent of your other child, and maybe you did end in a divorce. And the question would be, what thoughts, beliefs may you need to have a divorce? What thoughts or belief
Mhm.
may you need to evict from your mind around relationships? And some of the typical thoughts or limiting beliefs around it is that love is hard, it's it's painful, men are animals, women are crazy, you
Mhm.
know the hard ones are the ones that to go, the hard ones seem to be the ones you go after, or the good ones are already taken, or whatever the
So,
story is.
yeah. I've got
Whatever
a
the
couple
story
for
is,
you. Like,
what is it?
you've got so many kids. Who's gonna want you with all these kids? And you've been divorced. Like, I've heard it because being twice divorced is like, well, who's gonna want to marry you? Or you've got three kids, and there were so many limiting thoughts that were being thrown at me. They weren't even thoughts that I had myself. They were people, pushing their thoughts, their beliefs on me, and it actually caused me to stay within the relationship longer than I even wanted to, because I started believing in it, like, oh my gosh, yeah, I do have three kids. Who's going to want to take that on? But those limiting beliefs are going to keep you stuck and unhappy, because the truth of the matter is there are still good women out there. There are still good men out there. There are still people getting married, but not just three, but five, six, seven kids. Like, there are families still, uniting, and people are finding love under so many different circumstances. But again, you have to believe that it's possible for you. You have to believe that no matter what your current circumstances are as a single co-parent, that you too deserve and can find love again.
Absolutely. Deserve and can find it, because you truly
Mhm.
can. I will tell you a story. When I first was discovering this years ago, I definitely had a story around love. And it was that, yes, I was single and I should just focus on my kids because that's the right thing to do. And the other thing was that I just thought men were animals, like, what's the
Mhm.
point? I mean, every single man that I've known of, even some family members, were just unfaithful, right? They weren't,
Yeah.
trustworthy. And I don't know if it was an island thing, but like that's what I grew up. Even as a child, it was like this was normal that my grandparent had mistresses, and it was accepted. And there's this idea that like that's what I would end up finding then. And one day I remember I was having a conversation with a really good friend, a guy named Tito, and he's married. He's happily married to his wife still to this day. They've been together for close to 30 years. And
Oh,
at that
wow.
time, yeah, they've been together since they were teenagers, and they have kids together. Now they're grandparents. And I remember thinking about them like this one day. I realized, what if I actually start paying attention to examples in my real life of people that actually have successful relationships? And granted, like it's not like it's perfect, but they're together. They got each other's back. They actually have this commitment that
Mhm.
they're upholding, this covenant that they've created, or that they've aligned to, I should say. And he was
Yes.
one of those people. And then I started to really see that I was actually focusing on all the negative stories, all the historical memories, all of the stories that you hear that just don't support me even being open to having love in my life again. And I realized that I started to do an inventory of where was some of those stories coming from. Like you mentioned, Cassandra, sometimes they come from the people closest to you, or maybe not
Yeah.
they're closest to you, but they're people in your
In
circle.
your
And
circle,
you got to
yeah.
start exploring what you're going to continue to allow in that circle or not. And it's not to say, disconnect from people, but you had to create the environment, the communicate, the environment that supports what you want to create in your life. So think about
Yes.
that. What might you need to identify in your environment, whether it's people, audios. Oh my God, music used to do it. Tony Braxton. I stopped listening to Tony Braxton. I don't know if any of you guys know
Ooh,
Tony Braxton,
triggering,
but
yeah.
very triggering.
Unbreak my
And she's
heart.
girl, and I love her, I love her, but I realized I would play that nonstop. I had her CD, and
Hmm.
cassette when cassettes were in. And I was like, okay, the music. So music, environment, people, what is it that what around you is influencing these beliefs? Keep that in mind so that you can start changing and making adjustments in your life that support the vision you have for yourself
Yes. And
when it comes
simply
to
taking
love.
control of it as well, because up until the point of you believing it for yourself, you're giving into all these outside factors controlling and directing how you're feeling and how you're viewing things based on the lyrics of the song, based on, and then the people that are pushing their limiting beliefs on you, they mean well. They don't mean harm by it. They're bringing light these limited beliefs because they feel like, I don't want her to leave this marriage and end up out there struggling with these three kids. But it never occurred to them that I might leave this marriage and be the happiest that I've ever been because of it. And so they want to play it safe. They want to stick with what they have, as opposed to just supporting your decision to find joy and peace in your life. And so um, that those boundaries, setting those limits and things into place, and shifting the type of songs, shifting the type of people. And sometimes you don't have to shift the people, shift the conversation. Respectfully let
Yeah,
them know that this topic is not up for discussion anymore. Like it doesn't have to be, removing people, but definitely
correct.
gaining back the control to narrate your story going forward.
Absolutely. That is 100% what it is. You don't, like I was saying, you don't have to cut people off, but you get to
Hmm.
take control of how your life, how you create your life, the narration of your story. So
For
think
sure.
about that. What's the story you have about relationships? And what might be the story you want to start creating? So take a moment to take a screenshot of that and journal entry that in your next opportunity. So, because beliefs are truly important, but aside from beliefs, you know what's even more important, Cassandra? I'm sure you could agree
Hmm.
on this.
Yes.
Being
Anchored in your
clear about your
commitment.
commitments.
Yes.
Absolutely. So you can be anchored in it.
Yes, for
Yep.
sure. And
You know what?
that
Go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
And what would Webster say about commitments? Like the definition of it is the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, etc. And what's interesting is that Webster also has a different meaning to it, and it's actually it's hard. It actually said something like it's hard, something that's hard
Hmm.
in life. So
Wow.
even in with the word commitment, there's a possibility of looking at it in a way that supports you or that creates a space of limitations and the feeling of it being hard and difficult.
That's so interesting.
Oh, it is interesting. When I saw the polarity of it, I thought that's very, very interesting. And of course, I chose to put that is a state of, being dedicated to a cause, because as a
Hmm.
co-parent, we are dedicated to the cause of growing these children, obviously in healthy spaces and much more.
Yes. And so here on this slide, we're going to take a closer look on the type of commitments that I'd like to ask you to see what it is that you're committed to doing this process. And this it really doesn't matter what stage of finding a new relationship or seeking a new relationship that you are, but there's definitely some food for thought for you to consider. So be sure to take a screenshot of these questions or jot down some notes. That way, again, you can refer to them at a later time. But we want to start with what are you committed to experiencing in all areas of your life? And so, I know the topic of discussion is dating and so forth, but it does impact all areas of your life. And so sometimes you just want to start from the beginning and take a look at the big picture and talk about what are you committed to experiencing. Are you committed to finding more joy in your life? Are you committed to being happy? Are you committed to being a better parent to your children? Are you committed to um, just allowing yourself to be emotionally available, emotionally vulnerable? Are you committed to the process of being the partner that you are seeking out there in someone else? The next question is, what are you committed to your children experiencing when you date and when you bring a new relationship home? And so this is so key because um, every stage of relationship has a beginning, and sometimes the ultimate goal is for a lasting relationship, and society, society grooms us for that, to grow into a long lasting relationship. But what will that look like for the children involved? um, the same way we wouldn't want our co-parent to bring a lot of women or a lot of men around, do we want our children to experience that even of our own hand? Because we suffer from this a lot, where we can point the finger of what they're doing over there, don't do that around my child. But are we taking a look at how we're moving in our own dating life? If it's not okay for the ex to have people coming and going, be mindful of how you're moving as well, especially if you're the custodial parent. um, a lot of non-custodial parent, they can get away with being a little bit more flex, because when it's their off weekend or their off time or their off month, the children aren't around. But those of us that are custodial parents, where our children are waking up and going to sleep at home, we have to be conscious of not only who we bring home, but the frequency of when we go out. Like, how often are we leaving our home, leaving our parenting with children to go out? And to paint a clearer picture, are we clubbing every weekend? Are we out, traveling all the time? Are we like the social butterfly, and just kind of neglecting our parental responsibilities? And so we want to be clear on what our commitment is. Are we going to create a balance for the children, or are we going to go from one extreme to the other when it comes to stepping out? The next one, real quick, is what are we committed to for the future partner's experience? Meaning, the person that you meet. Let's just say this man or woman comes into your life, and oh my gosh, he or she is the one. But what experience are we inviting them into? Is it a drama filled experience with our ex? Are we pulling them into a situation where our children are not ready for us to date? Because he or she might be
Mhm.
perfect for us, but is our child ready to be introduced to a new person? Did we give our child enough time to heal and accept the fact that the previous relationship is over? Is that child ready to welcome a new person into their life? And so we have to be considerate of not only what our needs are, but did we consider setting the stage and making it a welcoming one for the person that's coming in? And lastly, what are we committed to when it comes to communicating with our ex or the co-parent? Um, and I think sometimes it can be very difficult, but if we kind of just open the lines of communication, and I don't mean letting them know, hey, I'm going out on a date tonight, or hey, I'm dating now, or anything like that. But if there's a need to know, be sure to slow down enough to let that person know. Like, hey, I've been, seeing someone for a couple months, and I think I'm ready to bring them around Junior, and I just wanted to give you the heads up in case Junior starts dropping names or starts, mentioning something or whatever. Want you to know that there's a new person around. It's common courtesy. Not everyone gives that, but I think it'll set the tone for, like, oh, they considered me enough to give me a heads up so that I'm aware about it. And let's just say they had a problem with it. It's a perfect opportunity to discover that at that moment, instead of finding out after you introduce the person. And then the ex or the co-parent is going crazy. Grandma's wondering why you're bringing some random person to my house, or your uncle is, well, like all the people that are involved in raising your child
Mhm.
has an opinion about you dating, or opinion about the person you brought in. But it's good to just find a way to communicate these things to that co-parent, to alleviate some problems later on down the line.
Yeah, I would an opportunity to avoid causing this to be drama that a child has to manage, because when
Hmm.
you mentioned that, perhaps, I mean, if you're bringing somebody near your child, a new person that you're taking seriously in your life, and they bring it up to another parent, and that parent has a reaction to it, you never know. I mean, there are children that have had to experience I wouldn't say it's the wrath, but they're watching. They understand, like, when somebody is not happy and something is
Yeah.
off or wrong. And you don't need to leave that with your children. You get to be responsible in communicating it in a way that you're not asking for permission. You're just creating the space to have some, to really just be an open dialogue, so that there is no confusion or that it doesn't impact the child. So these questions are really good questions for all of you. As Cassandra mentioned, please take a screenshot of it because it really is important to get clear about your commitments. Because once you're clear about what you want those areas of your life to look like, first your entire life, and then what you're committed to your children experience, future partner experiencing, and even the co-parents experiencing, then you can really get a clearer idea on what you're committed to, what you're going to stand for, and how do you continue to establish the vision of your love life, because all of it is one thing. Your life is that everything. It's your love life, it's your parenting life, it's your professional life, it's all of those things. So take some time to reflect on that and reflect on where you see yourself. Like really visualize it. Like once you're clear on the commitments, visualize what this next phase of your life with your love life looks like. Where do you see yourself living? What do you see yourself doing? What makes you feel the happiest? What do you want to start exploring if there's anything that's there that you want to explore? And when you're rewriting your love story, consider the person you'll be dating, what role they would play, if any, especially when it comes to the children, and what areas of your co-parenting do you want your partner to leave up to you or your ex? And I'm sure, Cassandra, you can probably delve a little bit deeper into these questions.
Yeah, that's very important, especially when you're starting to blend the new person into your life. Um, that new person is gonna depend on you to help them navigate the situation. Um, and it helps for you to already know what your boundaries are. Like an example of that is, hey, look, I don't want you disciplining my child. If there's something going on, um, that's troubling you or whatever relating my child, please just bring it to my attention. That way I can at least be a part of, resolving the issue. Um, Sometimes if that's not set up front, you'll walk into a situation where, your kid and this person are clashing because something happened, and the way they choose to parent or discipline might differ from yours. Um, it's just very important to have these set in place for yourself so that you know how you're navigating it, especially when the new person comes in, because you're recreating and revamping and tweaking what has been constant for such a long time. And it can be a very confusing time. And it can cause a strain off of on what you've established to get that person to be in your life in that way, because at that point you've already gone past the lovey-dovey stage of it, and you want to start getting serious where this person is getting involved with your children, with your family members. And so you want to create a safe place for that new partner, and you also want to make sure that the ex or the co-parent that's helping you feels that your relationship with them is still as important as it was when this other person wasn't there, meaning that you're not going to bring in this person and have them disrupt the co-parenting relationship that you already managed to maintain all this time before they arrived. And so all of these things are great to just at least be aware of what can go wrong, aware that these needs to be addressed, and grow into it, because it's not as simple as setting a plan. Sometimes you have to be exposed to different scenarios for you to take a step back and be like, wow, I haven't considered that one. And so as you're going through the process and living your life, you can be learning and pausing and taking note to make corrections as you go. And so here it talks about you being conscious to show your partner, as I stated earlier, that the new relationship is valued while keeping the balance to not disrupt the old one. And so it can take compromise. Sometimes it can take, just open communication. And one doesn't have to intertwine with the other. At this stage, the ex doesn't necessarily have to sit down and have a powwow with the new guy or whatever, or the new woman. You can still could be that that person to communicate to both scenarios, but just be mindful that if they coexist, they will both impact each other. And so you just got to be aware that what you're doing in one area can create a cause and effect in another. Um, it might sound confusing, but in time, you'll realize that it's easier to just maintain what you have going on with the co-parenting and just focus on how to ease that new person in seamlessly. It won't be seamless in the beginning, trust me. But as you work on identifying the bumps in the road, you can definitely do it. You can definitely do it.
Yeah, and you know what comes to mind around this is, yeah, it absolutely can be done, and it really does take something around like the communication. I know you mentioned that, at some point, let's say at some stage, they don't need to necessarily meet each other, but at another stage where the relationship might be, let's say, you're getting married and you're living together
Hmm.
and you're like blending families essentially, right?
Yeah.
Where it might be essential to actually start having a dialogue where the new partner actually is speaking to the co-parent when things come up with the children. um and so every scenario is different, but that could
Hmm.
be something that is established at some point, and you could just keep that in mind, like how to facilitate so that there is harmony in this blended situation, because that's like when it starts to become more sticky. Oh, and I would, maybe that's even a limiting belief, right? It's sticky. But 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 it could be that, like that's when there's obviously like communication that needs to take place, and sometimes it's communication that most people might resist, but would be
Hmm.
essential to make sure that there's harmony in the home for the children. So
For sure.
yeah, I just thought of a scenario. That's why I was bringing it up, because I think it does come up at some point of the process.
For sure.
And that comes back to like being intentional in your communication, right? Like, how important is that? Like, all of these things, like starting off with getting clear. First of all, getting clear about what co-parenting is and how it shows up in your life, how it might be appearing in your life, right? And all of the beliefs that are tied to dating as a co-parent, and what commitments you'd be anchored to. But ultimately, like, communication is a very huge part, and I was just describing a story of essentially that, like, when things get sticky, quote unquote, like, you get to have these crucial conversations. And what is communication essentially? I mean, really, it's not only what we say, but it's how we say it. All of those things make a huge impact to influence what the outcome is of a conversation. And it's also the same thing is what supports people when they're going out there and dating, but that's a separate topic I'll probably talk about on a separate webinar. Um,
Hmm.
so so it's something to consider, like it's something to consider, basically the verbals and the nonverbals, and what communications you might need to consider when it comes to anchoring in your commitments. Thinking about your commitments and what you have a stand for. How will you be communicating your stand? Is there anything that stands in the way from you already doing that now? Right? Have you already had found yourself not saying things that you needed to say? And how, what's the work that you're going to start doing to actually start creating a space for you to vocalize what would support you staying anchored to your commitments? This goes back to what Cassandra was mentioning around boundaries. How are you communicating it? Both verbally and non-verbally. You can't expect somebody to read your mind, even if you're non-verbally looking like, well, I'm not really happy about it, but it's okay. No, it's not okay. So how are we going to start communicating that it's not okay, both in word and deeds?
Hmm.
And how are we going to use that communication so that we're creating the boundaries in a loving manner? Because you don't have to, it's not a battle. There's no need to infuse like battle mode in order to create boundaries, right? how are we using communication to verbalize our no's, like what we are not going to be a stand for or what is not okay. And this is not only to co-parents, to the other co-parent, but even when it comes to the new partner in your life, right? And what might be some further communications that need to take place, that you might need to start, that establishing like what's been hard to speak on that you might want to start working on, so that you, once you get out there and meet new people, you're able to really vocalize what will support you staying anchored to your commitments. Cassandra, did you want to touch on anything around that?
No, I mean, you kind of hit it on the nail as far as how key communication is, and um, and it's very important to take a step back and self-analyze, like you said. What Explore what exactly is keeping me from feeling like I can voice an opinion or a thought, and see what you can do to remove that barrier. And if I may add, feel vulnerable enough to invite a trusted expert or a trusted friend to, um, not trusted friend, but a qualified friend is what I should say, that can help guide you in, because you definitely don't want to bring people into the situation that's going to add more clutter, more chaos. But um, the examples that I would think of is, maybe if you have your own life coach that's helping you through certain things, or maybe if you're already seeing a therapist about other situations that you might have been seeing the therapist about, feel free to bring up some of the roadblocks that you're facing when it comes to being able to open up and communicate, period. Not to mention being able to communicate to your co-parent or the new person that you're dating. But at the end of the day, don't give into that wall. Don't give into that thing that's causing resistance from you being able to move forward and push through that communication process, because it's so key and crucial for this to succeed.
Absolutely. And so think about, like, right now in your life, what might there be? Is there anything that you're withholding or not sharing with somebody? Is there something that you need to speak up about? You might want to consider exploring that. And to Cassandra's point, pulling in qualified individuals to support you with that if needed. Absolutely. One of the things that I have seen in my journey since, wow, I think it was in 2008 was when I really discovered the power of sharing what I was up to, the power of sharing what you're up to. If you're here, it's because, or if you're listening to this replay, it's because you have an interest in creating your love life, and to do so as a co-parent in the world, right? And it's crucial that you share that this is something of interest to you. How many people have you shared it with? How many people have you been speaking about it to? And really being like, serious about what you want to create. How many people have you requested or asked to support you with this? Because you don't have to create all of this by yourself. you know you get to discover your community out there, your family, your qualified friends to speak to, your coaches that are out there, therapists that are there to speak with you. Who are you sharing this with? Because alone, yes, you can, but together in community, there's so much more that can happen. And it happens like magic. Like, it's almost like miracles start to happen when you start sharing it with the right person. So I want to invite you to really think about that. If you've been trying to do it by yourself, think about who you get to share this with. Who will be that person, that qualified person in your life? And that's part of you creating your love life. That's where you start moving things even in a greater direction, because you start being held accountable. It's interesting, right? The word accountability is like, some people have this heaviness with the word, because it's like, oh no, they're going to ask me about it later. But it's okay if they ask you about it later, because you get to actually say, okay, no, it's not moving anywhere, or yes. Or if you say no, then that's a great opportunity to discover what's there with a qualified person that could understand and support you in creating that. So I definitely invite you to take action with this. Don't just listen to this webinar and save it in your hard drive, or nowadays it'll probably be in YouTube or something like that. But the point is that there's a lot of juicy stuff, and we're going to recap it really quickly. We started off with talking about what co-parenting is. We reviewed that with Cassandra. She gave us some great understanding of what it is. I mean, I was even surprised to hear, it's not just about the ex-partner, it's the people that are helping to raise this child. All of these people are part of this process, and you get to keep them in mind. Having an understanding of your beliefs. What are those beliefs? How are they stopping you from creating a love life that supports you and that's all inclusive with the rest of your life? That doesn't have to be separate. Being anchored in your commitments. What are you even committed to in your life in all areas and with all the key players or the key people in your life? What are you committed to your children experiencing and your future partner experiencing? And what are you committed to having in communication with the co-parents? And being anchored in that with communication, getting clear about where you are with that, inviting somebody in to support you if needed, a qualified person to support you if needed. So think of all those things. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, Cassandra, before we wrap up?
No, that was a great recap. Awesome. Yeah, you covered it all.
Okay, perfect. Well, I also want to invite all of you to consider that there's so much more. I'm gonna, Cassandra's gonna share a little bit at the end, but for me, Love Camp, I wanted to share that there's a lot more that's coming up with Love Camp. One of the pillars has always been the value systems, obviously communication, which I mentioned before, and truly it's being in awareness of what's fulfilling in future relationships, getting to meet new people, understanding your love styles or your attachment styles, which we didn't get into here, but that's some of the studies that relate to the impact that that the parents' relationship or the way parents have relationships influences the child's ability to have secure and healthy relationships. So we go into that, and I'm inviting all of you to check out lovecamp.co. The blog actually is like a great thing to check out these days, and also the podcast for past recordings that are on there. You can also check out a WhatsApp group that I've created so that we can continue the conversation on there. You can ask questions. And I want to thank you for watching the webinar. There's also the opportunity for you to connect with Cassandra, who is up to great things. And I'll let Cassandra share a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you. And so, yeah, Blended Hearts is a nonprofit, as I stated earlier in the webinar. And so, what that looks like as far as how we service the community is that locally we have a lot of great family events here in Orlando, Florida, but virtually you'll find me doing webinars partnering with individuals just like Virginia, or even leading my own webinar. And so what you see on the screen here is an invitation to join my mailing list so that no matter where you are, because this is definitely a nationwide organization, no matter where you are, we'd love for you to come and join us and participate. This past year, we had our very first conference, and we're going to have one again later on this year in October. We're going to have retreats for parents. We're going to have virtual events and covering challenges. We're going to go through weekly challenges of different things. And even, I think the biggest part of our organization is this. I am partnered with family law attorneys, family therapists. I'm partnered with social workers, life coaches, all the experts that were pillars in me thriving and succeeding in not only my co-parenting relationships, but even in my self-development and growth, because we advocate the fact that your co-parent does not necessarily have to be on the same journey that you are. But what makes a difference in the relationship is them witnessing and seeing how you're choosing to move. And so if you rise above the pettiness, if you rise above the drama, if you disconnect yourself and set healthy boundaries, 9 times out of 10, that partner will either follow suit or they'll give up and just, be like, you know what, he or she is not about the drama anymore. I'm going to let it be. And so this journey is not so much about getting that person on board and that person has to join you. If they do, that's great. We do have individuals that come on board with their exes, and it's a beautiful thing when that happens. But the reality of it is, it's not always going to happen that way. And so we do challenge you and let you know that if you are a co-parent or a parent period that is seeking for better resources, better solutions in parenting, especially in a blended family setting, this place is for you. And so if you're on the Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat links where you can find us. We're also on Instagram, and you can find us at Blended Hearts Inc. On Instagram, and on Facebook you can find us at Blended Hearts as well. But this link will get you on our mailing list, and you'll be the first to hear about upcoming events. You'll be the first to get discounts, and all of our amazing experts, they pour back into the nonprofit by giving you access to their services. One of our counselors, one of our therapists, offered each individual that signed up 6 free therapy sessions, legit therapy sessions that you would normally have to go through your insurance or come out of pocket and pay for. And so it's just a great opportunity. And even if you don't see the benefit in it for yourself, if you know of someone that can use the services, please feel free to pass this forward. One thing I do ask, I love to meet people along the journey of sharing about our program. If you come across our social media handle, if you come across me online, go ahead and hashtag Love Camp. That way I know where we connected. That way I can make the connection to Virginia and her community, because I do take it seriously when I'm invited into a community such as yours, and I want to make sure that your people get the value that they deserve when connecting with me. So thank you, Virginia.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for joining me as my co-host on this journey. And with that, I say good night and thank you all.
Good night.